Good afternoon. On behalf of the Mandel Center Alumni Association, the faculty and staff at the Mandel Center, we thank you for joining us for this celebratory occasion. The Leadership in Nonprofit Management Award was first presented in 1995, and the Organization Innovation Award in 2006. Although words cannot fully express our appreciation, you can see I'm getting choked up even thinking about what I'm going to say. We want to thank all of our sponsors for your support. This is just an absolutely spectacular turnout, and we thank you. As the other executive directors of the center have said, the Mandel Center is proud to look forward to this, its 25th year, and to celebrate the existence of being recognized as one of the international leaders in nonprofit education. And we are profoundly grateful to the Mandel family for its support. The awards is a special occasion for us because it centers on things that we value at the mission of the organization, and that is excellence and innovation in nonprofit leadership. And speaking of excellence in nonprofit leadership, I would like to ask Barbara Snyder, our CWRU president, to join me at the podium and to make some welcoming remarks.
Thanks, John. It's wonderful to see such a great crowd here. I don't need to tell anyone in this room that the past year has been one of remarkable change. We had an historic presidential election. We suffered a global economic crisis, and now we watch as Congress and the President tackle health care, one of the most challenging issues of our time. The nonprofit sector has been at the center of many of these developments. For the jobless, for those at risk of foreclosure, some of your organizations provide financial help, emotional support, education, training, and most important, a sense of hope. Some of your organizations nurture the soul through cultural and arts programming. And some of you provide guidance, insight, data, and advice to government agencies really stretched during these tough times. You, of course, have done all these things when your own resources have been threatened and when your own energies have been taxed as maybe never before. As much as we are here to honor an outstanding leader and an exemplary organization, I want to start by saying to all the nonprofit leaders in the room, thank you for everything you've accomplished for the last 12 months. Yes, you deserve it. Even though I'm just supposed to say welcome and thank you, I can't leave without saying a few words about our award recipients. First, to the Cleveland International Film Festival, winner for Organizational Innovation. Congratulations. Your festival began in 1977, 32 years ago. But how long ago was that, really? That was the year that Apple Computer got started. It was the year, for those of you who remember, the first Star Wars, the original Star Wars, reached movie screens in 1977. So it is a long time. Many things have been accomplished. I could say your survival alone is reason to applaud, but you have done so much more than survive. You have flourished, you have raised standards for excellence and creativity every single year, and you have truly enriched our community with the work that you do. So thank you for your passion and your persistence. They are gifts to our entire community. And then, of course, yes. And then, of course, there's Steve Hoffman. I can think of few people more deserving of this honor. Steve's lifelong commitment to the Jewish community is an inspiration. He is an individual of enormous intellect, insight, compassion, and courage, these are qualities reflected in every single thing he does. It's no wonder that in 2001, the United Jewish Communities tapped Steve to help steer the new organization through its earliest days. And it's a testament to his character that he took on the task, commuting from Shaker Heights, so that his family's life would not be disrupted while he was serving. We are all fortunate to have Steve back here full-time, and I will say that I have been a major beneficiary of his presence in this community. He's been a wonderful advisor since I started as president of Case Western Reserve. He has helped me in more ways than I can possibly say up here. So I'll just say thank you, Steve, and congratulations on this very, very richly deserved honor. Now, again, welcome. It is terrific to have you all here. Please enjoy the program. You're going to hear a great talk and then hear more about both of our award winners. So we're very pleased to have you here. Thank you very much.
I would like to now introduce our keynote speaker, Diana Aviv. Welcome. Diana is the president and CEO of Independent Sector, the National Leadership Forum for America's nonprofits, foundations, and corporate giving programs. Independent Sector represents tens of thousands of organizations throughout the United States, advancing the common good by leading, strengthening, and mobilizing the charitable community. A native of South Africa, Diana graduated from the University of Witwatersrand. Now, for a country boy from West Virginia to try to say that appropriately, I hope she will forgive me. But she got her bachelor's degree there and then got a master's in social work from Columbia University. Prior to assuming her current position, she's had a varied and highly successful, and through the eyes of a fellow social worker, an exceptionally fascinating career. Among other things, she had a private psychotherapy practice in New York and New Jersey, which often found her serving as an expert witness in capital cases in New Jersey. She also served as a director of a comprehensive program to serve battered women and their families. She had a period of time that she was a director of programs for the National Council of Jewish Women. She also was the Associate Executive Vice Chair at the Jewish Council of Public Affairs. And, as was indicated prior to coming to her current position, she was a Vice President for Public Policy and Director of the Washington Action Office of United Jewish Communities. In her current position, she is often a frequent speaker on behalf of the nonprofit sector. For example, the subjects she's often asked to address include the financial state of nonprofits, or the public policies affecting charitable and foundations, the role of civil society in a democracy, and civic engagement. Most all of us in the nonprofit sector are well aware of the particular leadership she provided to the panel on the nonprofit sector. Serving as its executive director, she was involved with other leaders throughout the country in developing one of the major guides that directs us now in the nonprofit sector, entitled The Principles for Good Governance and Ethical Practice, a guide for charities and foundations. More than 80,000 copies of this guide have now been distributed among those of us involved in nonprofit work. As you might expect, Diana is a member of many boards, many advisory groups. Just to name a few, the Board of Governors for the Partnership of for Public Service, the Board of Directors of GuideStar, the Board of Directors of the National Council on Aging, a number of advisory boards, the Peter G. Peterson Foundation, the International Center for Nonprofit Law, the National Center on Philanthropy and Law, and if there were not enough to occupy her time, she also serves as an advisory capacity for the Comptroller General's Advisory Board at the Government Accountability Office. She has testified several times before Congress and has been featured in a variety of media outlets, including the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, NPR, MSNBC.com, and I think it's time that we add to this illustrious list by putting Cleveland Crane's business on that list, to say nothing of the newsletter of the Mandel Center for Nonprofit Organizations. So we are absolutely delighted to have this national leader to present the keynote address at this event. An excellent and innovative leader she is, and we welcome you.
John, thank you so much for that introduction. It's really a special honor for me to be here today, particularly because of something that John mentioned earlier in my career, where Barbara Mandel was the chair of the board of directors of the National Council of Jewish Women when I worked there. And watching her in action, I learned a good deal about how to lead an organization, and more importantly, how to inspire others. It was a privilege to work with Barbara, and through her, Mort, who over the years has done so much to strengthen our democracy, our civil society, and this community. Let me add my heartfelt congratulations to the leadership and staff of the Mandel Center, now celebrating its 25th anniversary. I'd also like to share good wishes and congratulations with our two award winners today, Steve Hoffman, who I've had the pleasure of working with, should I say for, and Amy, I hate to say this, Amy, because this will go to his head, but he is one of my favorite people. I know it's hard to believe, but I also want to congratulate Cleveland's International Film Festival. You really selected wisely. Today, I want to take a look at the next decade of the charitable sector's impact and ways in which we can make it as bright and as promising as its development has been over the past quarter century. Specifically, I'm interested in exploring the big questions that we should be asking ourselves now in an effort to better prepare for the future. To do so requires a little bit of context regarding the trends that have emerged since the founding of the Mandel Center in 1984. One that stands out is our rapid growth during that period. The total number of nonprofits and private foundations increased from 821,000 in 1984 to over 1.5 million in 2009. Accompanying this increase was a surge in sector employment by 55%, from 7.1 million people in 1984 to 12.9 million in 2005. At the same time, charitable giving has risen over the last quarter of a century. Such contributions increased 4.5 times, rising from 68.6 billion in 1984 to 307.6 billion just last year. In addition, total revenue for the sector increased by a factor of 8, skyrocketing to $1.9 trillion over the last quarter century. This pattern of growth, trend lines heading smartly north, fell off sharply at the end of 2007, the start of what has been called the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression. With demand surging, nonprofits began trimming budgets, cutting programs, funding fewer efforts, limiting services, and also closing their doors. Many in our community continue to wrestle with the troubling choice of how to reach their aspirations in the long haul, while at the same time manage their obligations in the short term. nonprofits are not in a safe place right now. One recent survey of about 360 direct service organizations reported that 83% recorded some level of fiscal distress. Nearly half reported severe or very severe distress, particularly as it related to their finances. And then we're only talking about 2009. And many believe that the year ahead offers little promise for a different scenario. We have always stepped up to the plate during a time of crisis. I recall the devastating tsunami and earthquake that struck Indonesia, Sri Lanka, and Thailand, and a number of other Southeast Asian nations in December of 2004. Following the heels of that disaster came the brutal hurricanes of Katrina and Rita. We thought that people would give less to their favorite local charities and more directly to these catastrophic disasters. Not so. They dug deeper and gave more. Giving to others is part of our uniquely American character. And in these times, people have continued to give. Only they have less to give over the last 18 months. In fact, total charitable giving in 2008, which was estimated at $307.65 billion, registered the first decline since 1987. Foundation funding has decreased as endowments have shrunk, and in some cases as much as 35% to 40%, commensurate with market declines. Those of you working in University Circle know these economic realities all too well. The Cleveland Museum of Art has cut salaries, reduced operating costs, and may delay building renovations due to a 30% drop in their endowment. The Cleveland Museum of Natural History laid off 16 out of 200 employees. Despite merging departments and curbing costs, the Cleveland Playhouse let go of about half a dozen senior people, a heavy toll for a staff of 50 people. But for the stimulus package that is expected to help a critical group of people served by nonprofit organizations, state and some federal government funding streams are shrinking and even drying up altogether. State government reimbursements to social and health service agencies, for instance, have been delayed, reduced, or eliminated. The situation is dire, given the fact that government funding to these service agencies amounts to about 66% of their total revenues, which adds up to about $85.3 billion annually. Across the country, state economies are reeling from the recession. A colleague in Los Angeles sent me an email recently describing how the state of California, its government, had cut funding for his 16 child care sites. In effect, 774 children from low-income families would have nowhere safe to go after school. He notified the families and employees that the program was closed and processed the final checks. I spoke to him the day that he processed the final checks. As he was leaving to hand out those checks, we decided together, in fact, it was one of the reasons that I was meeting with him, we decided that we would write a piece for the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal or Washington Post, whoever would take our piece, to describe this dire situation. And as we were talking on the phone, he took another call. Literally at the 11th hour, he received notice that the program was saved for another year thanks to stopgap stimulus money. Funds, unfortunately, that will evaporate in about 10 months. I don't have better news about the situation in this bellwether state. Ohio's projected FY 2011 budget gap for that fiscal year is among the highest in the nation at $1.1 billion. But you know that already, just as you know about deep spending and service cuts to vulnerable communities. According to a June 2009 study by the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, the Ohio Department of Jobs and Family Services plans to eliminate 14% of its workforce that is responsible for disability services, child care, child support, health care, and child welfare. Ohio has already reduced services to senior citizens and closed 2 mental health facilities. That translates into thousands of people going without the help they need, and many more who were once service providers are now joining the assistance lines. In years to come, we may look back at this period and either describe it as an anomaly or as the beginning of a new era that will bring down the number of new nonprofits created each year. A period that sees slower growth of philanthropy and a plateau in individual giving. The question is this recession, have we witnessed merely a course correction from the past 25 years, or is this to be the new normal for the next decade or longer? And if this is the new normal, what does that mean for government's, what does that mean for government's role and responsibility? Is this the time that the social compact should be rewritten? Does government take on greater responsibility for the social safety net? Hard to imagine right now if the debate on government's role on healthcare is any indicator. But let me not get ahead of myself, that discussion's not yet over. A crisis of this magnitude brings pain and suffering as people regroup to find another way to manage. But it is also a period of change as people begin to question prior held assumptions that have shaped our behavior. Could you pass me my water? Sorry. Begin to question prior held assumptions that have shaped our behavior. If things are not working, some say, then maybe it's time to try a different approach. After all, what do we have to lose? The silver lining here is in the opportunity to look at what we do and how we do it and ask if there might be another way, a better way to make a difference. It is time to ask how we can increase our collective ability to build a better future in Cleveland, in Ohio, in America, and beyond. What types of challenges can we tackle together and solve in the decade ahead? How might we best groom the talent in this sector and society at large to achieve the greatest possible impact? The charitable community spends almost $1 trillion annually. We have a moral responsibility to safeguard these precious resources in a way that improves lives in the long haul. I'll admit that raising these strategic questions to Ohio's nonprofit and philanthropic community is deliberate on my part. You see, my recently adopted home state next door is Michigan, and I have the distance of an outsider, but well, some experience of an insider. And I know that you lead the nonprofit and philanthropic community on a number of levels. Your willingness to experiment and collaborate, your ability to form rich partnerships with each other and with government and business, with civic and religious leaders, your effort to train and educate tomorrow's nonprofit leaders. A number of examples come to mind. The Gordon Square Art District project is a close collaboration between 2 theaters and a community development corporation. Their combined $20 million capital campaign will result in an estimated $30 million in neighborhood revitalization over a 15-block area and $500 million in economic development. Imagine arts organizations driving in economic development. Hats off to you. Take your green, sustainable co-ops in low-income neighborhoods. One joint project between Ohio Employee Ownership Center at Kent State, the Cleveland Clinic, Towards Employment, and the Cleveland Foundation is helping to build green, for-profit businesses owned by local residents. I salute my friend Ron Richard of the Cleveland Foundation for his ever-growing arsenal of creative ideas and the courage to see them happen. A final example is right in front of our eyes. Established in 1984, the Mandel Center was one of the country's first academic programs exclusively designed to strengthen the nonprofit field through multidisciplinary graduate education. Then another first in 1991, when this institution was selected as the home of the Nonprofit Academic Centers Council, the first group entirely dedicated to promoting a networking of centers that do research and education in philanthropy and the nonprofit community. In some respects, it is not surprising that the charitable and philanthropic community in the Midwest is a lead innovator especially in Cleveland. It is in your DNA. Steve Hoffman once told me that no self-respecting businessman can make it in Cleveland if he or she doesn't give generously to the community. Right, Steve? Others look to you for inspiration and ideas, and they press your leaders to join them in building communities across the country. Your organizations have had to adapt operations, methodologies, and strategies when the 2000 recession rocked the auto industry, and of course, more recently as well. As you well know, the impact of such downturns lasts the longest in manufacturing-heavy regions, a fact reinforced by a study in June 2009 by the Brookings Institution, as if you needed to hear that. All in all, you've capitalized on the opportunities wrenched from the damage done by failing economies. You remind me of Ernest Hemingway's prose in Farewell to Arms when he said, "The world breaks everyone, and afterwards many are stronger in the broken places." I can only hope that there's some truth to the saying that as Ohio goes, so goes the rest of the nation. What has worked in the charitable community here, your resilience, your willingness to innovate and experiment, for example, are not just good for the country right now, they are essential. How we use this moment in time to make changes in our sector, changes that under normal circumstances we would not have considered, is up to each of us to consider. Yet with all that you have done, there are more rows to hoe. The stakes could not be higher. What is in need right now are your most prescient ideas so that together we can shape a vibrant, healthy, democratic society in 2020 and beyond. Albert Einstein once said, "Imagination is more important than knowledge." With these words in mind, I encourage you to envision life 25 years hence at your 50th anniversary. In 2034, will we have elected a female president, a woman of color? Will the Supreme Court look like the rest of society, not just one member of the Supreme Court? Will global markets operate using a single world currency? Will institutions like the United Nations be replaced by virtual organizations that transcend borders of nation-states? Might Cuba be a model of democracy? Will South Africa lead the world in successful community-based efforts to eliminate the scourge of AIDS? Will Cleveland lead the nonprofit community's ingenious efforts to attract and retain the best and brightest graduates and boomers to join our causes? What will become of those larger social ills lurking on the horizon? How will global warming impact the animal species or redefine living spaces and shorelines around the world? And given the ways that smartphones, laptops, and wireless have already transformed our lives, what ways will computing power alter our very existence? My point is that the extent to which we understand what is happening around us, are clear about our aspirations, disciplined about our goals, committed to working hard, and open to new ways of getting there, is the extent to which we are more likely to fashion creative solutions that propel our work forward. The face of America is changing, and yet in some cases, we have not adequately recognized and embraced such change. A small illustration. In 2005, the Census Bureau reported that approximately 1/3 of the United States population is comprised of people of color. However, 82% of nonprofits are made up of white staff. Such trends propel us to the question of whether our hiring practices are in need of reform. Will our workforce, over time, become stronger and more representative of America if we don't take deliberate action to achieve that goal? And how can we possibly do our work effectively if we are not taking advantage of the rich and diverse talent to be found in every community in America? The tricky part in managing our organizations to recognize correctly the trends, the game changers that will define the future, is our challenge. Consider two scenarios. The first involves baby boomers' retirement, that is, people born between 1946 and 1964. Today, about 13.7% of Ohio's population is 65 or older, slightly higher than the national average, which is about 12.8%. With average life expectancy in America now hovering between 77 and 80, what if people retire later in life? Granted, many are doing that right now because the recession has shrunk their savings accounts. But is your organization poised now to capitalize on the skills and experience of baby boomers if, in the long haul, millions of them elect to continue working into their mid or late 70s, maybe later? My ex-father-in-law is, for me, a shining example. My ex-father-in-law, he's still one of my dearest friends. Earlier this year, I didn't say his son, I said my father-in-law. That wonderful man, earlier this year, got a new job in a country called Swaziland, which is in South Africa. My ex-father-in-law is 91. Now a second scenario. The current size of the baby boomer generation is about 76 million people. But the subsequent generation, the Generation Xers, born between 1965 and 79, consists only of 46 million people. That leaves a 30 million person gap across America's entire workforce, a gap that nevertheless will affect us all. If you believe that most boomers will retire or seek work unrelated to what they've been doing, then the question for you is whether you are positioned to court and mentor younger generations who will be sorely needed to fill the management and leadership positions of your organization. These questions are further nuanced by the crisp reality that younger generations volunteer differently, well, than boomers do. They advocate for a cause, mobilize large groups of people, and raise money using technological tools. Equally fascinating about this group is that they rally behind causes rather than institutions. In other words, they are often described as sector agnostic. Their first priority is embracing an issue, passionately perhaps. Behind that, by some distance, and after quality of life issues, comes organizational loyalty. Consider Pierre Omidyar, the co-founder of eBay, and his wife Pam, billionaires by the age of 31. An iconoclast of classical business techniques, he believes that the sector too must adapt if it is to be effective. If it is resistant, he is content to work through other sectors, business or government, to achieve his goals. He has readily given up his tax-exempt status in service of his vision. Now, while I'm not advocating for one moment that you give up your tax-exempt status, the point of this example and the challenge that I'm posing here is to ask whether the approaches, programs, and strategies that you have in place today are the right ones to enable your organization to accomplish its mission tomorrow. Will your funding models and relationships carry you to 2010 and beyond, to 2020 and beyond? Can you justify keeping on in the same old way in the face of the indisputable reality that there is less money to go around? You don't need a master's degree to know that having too many organizations and too little funding is unsustainable. One obvious but underused way to remain solvent may be as simple as working with a neighbor so that we have less independence and more interdependence between individual organizations within our sector and among our relationships with business and government. For example, if you agree that many of us here today do not need our own accountants, our own HR staff, then why aren't we pooling these resources? We have been talking about these ideas for years. Nothing new about that. But all too often, the talk is met with 101 reasons why it is not possible to work in a new way with others. Independence, distinctive contributions, competition for funds, reluctant boards, lack of resources, and cultural differences, just to name a few. Technology, we know, is a game changer. The big question for us is how to use it to advance our work in ways that we have not yet conceived. A first step is to connect with those who are familiar with the various technology tools that are now available to us and learn about what they do. I did that, which meant that the person who's been most frequently visiting my office every day is the youngest member of staff. He's the advanced age of 22. And he knows more than all of the other people in my office combined about technology. In fact, IS has just completed an online mapping demonstration at the request of the Kellogg Foundation to identify the location of nonprofits serving communities at risk and of color throughout the state of New Mexico. Using a number of data points, including census data, we created a detailed map of the nonprofit landscape. As a result, they were able to zoom in on organizations with multiple connections and whose work concentrated in exact areas in which the poorest communities of color lived. This process enabled the foundation to identify these organizations and invite them to a discussion about working together with the possibility of additional resources. Contrast this with the traditional process of considering proposals submitted or the painstaking work of visiting communities and learning over time by word of mouth about the best organizations in which to invest. You, too, can map communities in your neighborhood to identify common board members, auditors, elected officials, and grant makers, just to name a few. Consider finding out who is in need of office space at the same time that you're about to renew your lease, or who is looking for HR support in the neighborhood, and consider sharing a position for the IT function. Mapping, though, is just one tool, but raises the question of whether we are using today's tools to their full potential. I suspect that for the most part, the sector is behind in leveraging technology to solve social problems. On the whole, we would benefit from more programs like the joint project between Case Western Reserve University and One Community, a nonprofit economic development organization. You may know about them. They are expanding broadband access in northeastern Ohio, and in so doing, offering classes on computers to seniors who can't leave their homes. They are also working to get computers into the homes of low-income families. Technology provides many other opportunities to invigorate our work. It can, and already has, changed the way in which we link grant makers to results, how we collaborate, how we foster civic participation and volunteerism, all in the service of a better outcome. You may have heard about how Netflix, the online movie rental company, in 2006 began offering an annual prize to the tune of $1 million to the team who improved by 10% the company's existing algorithm to predict what movies an individual is most likely to rent. In its first year alone, over 20,000 teams registered from about 150 countries. The experiment has been wildly successful in improving Netflix operations. Dare I say that if properly tailored to your organization's needs, it could serve, not Netflix, but the idea, could serve as a powerful model for our sector as well. We might also explore community partnerships that develop new ideas and are willing to take measured, calculated risks. I'm thinking of programs like the Civic Innovation Lab in Cuyahoga County. The lab invests in unusual ideas like indoor mountain biking parks or alternative fuel stations, ventures that often improve civic space, but that, alas, most funders won't touch. Pairing grant recipients with veteran entrepreneurs, the lab has invested in 52 ventures since 2003. To date, it has returned $9.4 million to the community and has created 128 sustained jobs. You too may see potential and promise where others don't. You probably know the city of Lorain, just west of Cleveland, and home to an author who has won both the Nobel Prize for Literature and Pulitzer Prize for Fiction, two of the highest accolades in the world of letters. Toni Morrison said, "I wrote my first novel because I wanted to read it." As such, she first had to imagine the story and then bring it to life. We have no choice but to do the same. Envision a world in 10, 15, 25 years out, and then in new, even unexpected ways to prepare our sector so that we have the capabilities to succeed. Doing so is imperative given the scope of what some call the mega problems of the future. Fundamental change within our charitable community is essential if we are to stay relevant and effective in the future. We must guard against the safe harbor of familiar people and programs, a comfort zone that discourages us from taking risks, from reaching out to others not in our immediate circles. Profound change is never easy because it calls for great energy to do things differently and carries with it the risk of failure. Whether collaborating with new partners or trying online tools, the key is trusting that the process will offer more interesting and creative results than the singular effort of any CEO, no matter how outstanding. And we have to be willing to live with the results, knowing that they have the potential to move us in new directions. I know this firsthand because IS just launched an initiative, an epic experiment really, designed to explore questions about the next decade. When I say IS, I'm talking about my organization. We are trying to think differently about how our long-held assumptions regarding how we operate, how we accomplish our mission, and where we want to be by the year 2020. And to address these issues, we convened a group of leaders a couple of months ago, including the wonderful and extraordinary Maria Marino of the Marino Institute, headquartered I think, in Rocky River. Is that right, Maria? We knew that if we were to have a prayer of being successful, no matter how brilliant the results of our strategy lab, we would need to provide a vehicle for a much larger audience to participate. A week and a half ago, we opened up this process in a way that we've never done before by creating an online challenge for any interested person out there, including all of you in this audience. Our hope is to build a community where nonprofit stakeholders can debate and discuss ideas about what it will take for the charitable community to make an even greater impact in the decade ahead. I invite each of you to participate in this Future Lab to help build out our collective future. In conclusion, I invite you all to think about the time when this great institution was created, 25 years ago. The year is 1984, and the world has become, as George Orwell feared, a dystopia. He writes, "Do you begin to see then what kind of world we are creating? It is the exact opposite of the stupid hedonistic utopias that the old reformers imagined. A world of fear and treachery and torment, a world of trampling and being trampled upon, a world which will grow, not less but more merciless as it refines itself. Progress in our world will be progress towards more pain." Fortunately, the 1984 that Orwell envisioned never came to pass because of, among other things, the collective energies of thousands of people who volunteer and serve causes greater than themselves, advocating human rights, safeguarding old-growth forests, helping end domestic violence, supporting vibrant cultural programs, donating to food banks, working on a college campus, immunizing children abroad, and advocating on behalf of those who cannot do so. The next 25 years is ours to imagine. If we do so mindfully, buoyed by the high hopes and wide-eyed optimism, with hard work and with committed partners, there is no limit to the type of lasting change we can enact together to create a better tomorrow for us all. Thank you.
Diana, thank you for a thoughtful and thought-provoking address. Absolutely on the mark. Thank you. Our program indicates that we are now going to move into that section where we are going to publicly honor those who have been awarded. And you see in the program the name Jim Foster. Had he had his druthers, I would not be doing what I'm about to do. He would have much preferred to come up here and go through the responsibilities that we've asked him to assume. But we don't want to do that without those of you who haven't had a chance to know something about him and his organization to hear that now. As I hope you know, he is indeed the chair of the selection committee that chose our awardees. He is the executive director of the City Club of Cleveland. They have gone through a very thoughtful process as they have arrived at the awardees today. I think all of us in here are aware that the City Club is the country's oldest continuous speakers series. And while we look forward to our 50th anniversary 25 years from now at the Mandel Center, Jim is looking forward to celebrating the 100th anniversary in 2012. I think that in and of itself the Friday forums attracts speakers nationally, international. They are the most informed, they are the most prominent, they are the most influential. The City Club broadcasts are carried now on more than 200 radio outlets in some 28 states. Another tribute to Jim's leadership. His contributions to this community are as exceptional as they are numerous. His talent, his sustained commitment to the community are widely recognized and deeply valued. We at the Mandel Center are especially grateful for his leadership in making some very difficult decisions about this year's honorees. So Jim, we thank you, and please join me.
Thank you, John. And thank you, Diana, also. We were fortunate to have you at the City Club about a year and a half ago. And it's wonderful, again, to hear your insightful look at our industry, and good luck with your lobbying efforts for equitable health insurance for the nonprofit industry and with your conference coming up next month in Detroit. Now let us turn to the part of the event where the rubber meets the road, the awarding of this year's Mandel Center Nonprofit Awards. There are two: Leadership in Nonprofit Management and Organization Innovation. First, I'd like to tell you for just a minute of the rather elaborate process that we have been through to arrive here. We began 6 months ago with a terrific committee of 19 people who do the actual work of making the selectees to be honored this evening. The call for nominations went out, and the community responded with 28 submissions. Then the difficult part, looking closely at these 28 excellent nominations to distinguish what really matched the criteria. There is a strictly confidential scoring system, as close to objective as we could make it. And then there were subcommittee meetings to pare the list down to a smaller number. And finally, a meeting of the whole, the final decision session, at which, through spirited discussions, we arrived at the awardees. And I think it goes without saying, but I do want to say it. There were some truly excellent nominations, some of whom who are in the room this evening, that could have easily won one of these awards, and perhaps in other years would have. I also think it's worth noting that each of these 19 committee members are executive directors or CEOs of nonprofit organizations, some large, some small, from 6 counties throughout Northeast Ohio. So in reviewing and ultimately in judging, these winners are selected by their peers, people who really know what leadership and innovation really mean, and who have a wide range of experience on which to base those judgments. I've been part of this committee for 5 years and can honestly say that it is though it has a lot of reading and a lot of work, it is immensely rewarding. It is also very humbling. We read some truly amazing descriptions of remarkable work being done every day in our community. And I'm confident that the committee members would agree this is one of the most enjoyable activities in which we are privileged to participate. And I'd like the members of the selection committee to stand just for a second for our appreciation. And I'd also like to acknowledge and thank Arlene Sheeran, Director of Marketing and Development at the Mandel Center for Nonprofit Organizations, and her staff for the excellent support, making of copies, lots of copies, keeping track of us and keeping us on track. Arlene, thank you. Now, first, leadership and nonprofit management. The extensive criteria include the full spectrum of engagement with constituents, community, and staff. Here is a brief look at what must be included. A record of visionary leadership that includes documented achievements, services as a nonprofit management role model, reflecting the highest standards of ethics individually and for the organization. Creativity, innovation, and entrepreneurship, as demonstrated by the candidate's ability to successfully identify and address core organizational issues, including shaping the public debate. Leadership in fostering interaction among staff, volunteers, and the community, and commitment to the principles and skills associated with excellent management. This really is a remarkable award, and so too is our awardee, a remarkable leader. These achievements and values certainly sound like Steve Hoffman to me. The quotes and testimonials that were included in the nomination for Steve were truly wonderful, and there is indeed a consistent theme: respect, trust, and a deeply rooted set of values. Steve is a developer of people. He is a teacher. He is a strategic thinker. He inspires people. He makes tough decisions. He is a prodder, and yes, I join many of you here celebrating Steve who have been prodded, but he gets things done. So highly regarded is Steve that he was asked to serve as president of the United Jewish Communities, the umbrella organization that represents 157 federations in 400 communities across America. Under his stewardship, the Jewish Community Federation in Cleveland has thrived. For 25 years, Steve Hoffman has been a leader, a trusted advisor, and a friend for so many people in this community, and particularly for so many in this room this evening. It is our high honor to present the 2009 Mandel Leadership and Nonprofit Management Award to Stephen H. Hoffman. Steve.
Yesterday was Yom Kippur. It's basically a 24-hour confessional. I had the honor in my own congregation of participating in the service for one of the readings, the Haftarah, the Maftar and Haftarah. And aside from the fasting impact, your knees shake when you're in front of the congregation, like they did at my own bar mitzvah when I was 13. But basically what we do for this 24 hours is pound our chests like this, confessing as a community to each of the sins that are in the prayer book. There's a lot of them. we're told that we may not be personally guilty for each one. Rabbi Block, if I get this wrong, correct it. But we do it together so that all the sinners in the room can proclaim their sins without worrying that somebody thinks I'm an adulterer. I'm not. Among the ones I picked up on very quickly yesterday as mind was drifting, it does happen. The good news is we do this over and over again during the course of the 24 hours, was the sin of pride. So thank you, Jim. But it's really very humbling, especially after yesterday, and I have to be careful not to drink it in too much. By the way, I remember the founding of the Mandel Center. I was one of the people that Mort involved in the process with, I think John Gardner was involved, and as well as Phil Bernstein, a name that many of us remember in the Jewish Federation world. It was a remarkable process, and I think the fruit it has borne is just self-evident of the careful process that was done then. I also want to express my appreciation to Diana for being here today. It makes this all the more sweet. I wasn't kidding. When you work with Diana, she doesn't work for you. She works with you. You buckle your seatbelt, she's driving the car, and off you go. And I also want to give my congratulations to the Cleveland Film Festival, which has truly been a remarkable development for all of us in Cleveland. I want to express my thanks to the judges and to Jim in particular. Jim mentioned prodding. I had no idea he was the chairman of the committee when I sat down with him over lunch to talk about all my complaints about the City Club speakers roster. One of the nice things in the nonprofit sector is you get to work with people like Jim who are dedicated to such tremendous ideals like free speech, right? You know, the ability to express ideas. It's like at the core of what our country is about, and Jim stands up for that every week, no matter how many of us want to pound him or the City Club into the ground on any given week. But don't let us do it, Jim. You keep standing there, as he did that day at lunch. I want to thank the nominators who made this possible, my board chairs. Deep appreciation to all of you. And to Daniel Blaine for raising the possibility. The idea has to start somewhere, and I have a suspicion it started with Daniel. I would like to introduce you to our senior staff at the Federation in the room. They could just stand for a brief moment. Oren, come on. Oren. I want to thank them because they're actually the people who make me look good, as well as my deep appreciation to all of Federation staff who make all of us look good. And then finally, in the thank yous, I want to thank Amy, my wife, who has to take me home no matter how I look. Just a few thoughts to share. When you're in jobs such as ours, you're constantly trying to balance management on the one hand and leadership on the other. This is the big distinction that John and the faculty are often caught teaching. And there are times for both. They're not mutually exclusive. You try to find people to run your organizations who are capable of shifting when it has to happen. And I've learned the hard way that the perspective you can do to run a national organization is really very different than what you have to do to make it work at the local level. I mean, one of the nice things about Cleveland is if you have a problem, you could probably solve it on any given morning at a restaurant in either downtown Cleveland or at the Union Club, at the City Club on Friday afternoon, or at Corky and Lenny's at 8 o'clock on the east side. Because you're probably going to run into the people who are aggravating you and have the source of solutions. Because that's what happens in a community such as ours. We see each other, we generally and genuinely like each other and do want to try to work out our problems. At the national level, I learned that you don't see anybody, they don't really like each other, they don't know each other, and you have to have a different approach. I did it for 3 years, and that was enough. One's management style and leadership style evolves over time with experience. We all make mistakes. I made plenty of them, and as well as a few things that you learn from that actually work, and you repeat them until you learn it's a mistake to repeat it. But there's a few lessons I wanted to share. The first lesson is you can't do it all alone. That's the second lesson. You can't do it alone. And the third lesson I learned is that when you're in our role, my role, maybe the most important thing you can do is to be a teacher. Mort Mandel is fond of quoting, I think Peter Drucker or someone like Peter, who said, it's all about who. And I used to think it was all about the ideas. But as I say, ideas are okay, but so who's going to do it? So you get very quickly to it's all about who. And I introduced you to the who of our team at the Federation. They're the ones who make it happen. I see my role often in the role of teacher. This is how things could happen. These are the kind of categories we need to think about. These are the issues that ought to be considered before we make our move. And I got that insight from my immediate predecessor, Stanley Horowitz, late one night in his office as he was getting ready to leave town. He didn't know at the time that I was going to succeed him. Neither did I. But among my professional teachers have been Henry Zucker of blessed memory, Sidney of blessed memory, and Stanley of blessed memory, all of whom preceded me as directors of the Federation. And I'm really, if I'm standing here today, it's in great part because of the lessons that they tried to give me. Anything I do well, it's because they taught me well. And all the rest are the mistakes that I keep making and trying to learn from. I continuously want to learn, and I've been lucky to learn from each of my board chairs. We are an organization that is managed by volunteers and professionals, and our success is directly tied to the success of that partnership. And I can honestly say, and if we had a lot longer, which we don't have, and I'm not going to do, but I could literally tell you the major lessons I learned from each of the board chairs that I have worked with. It's not just fun to be with them, it's a real educational experience to draw out of them how they see the world, how they impact the world, how they change the world for better, and how they help you be a better person and a better professional. And I'm grateful to each of them for what they personally have given me that has enabled me to do this job a little bit better. And at different stages of my career, I was blessed. Our nominating committee seemed to always give me exactly the right board chair that I needed to get through the crisis of the day. And I'm open to learning from our staff. And I can tell you, honestly, they never stop trying to teach me, which is a good thing. I have been privileged to be the professional leader of one of the finest philanthropic institutions in America, I believe, let alone among our Federation peers. I've had great satisfaction of making a difference in the world around the corner and thousands of miles away. I want to thank you all for recognizing our work, the work that we have done for the last 25 years, and to assure you we look forward to doing some good for many more years to come. Thank you again.
Thank you, Steve. Your words, as usual, reflect your style, which is giving credit to others. And now on to our next award, the Organization Innovation Award. Once again, there were many outstanding nominations, and once again, a particular submission rose clearly to the top. This is the age of everything technology. Facebook and MySpace and Twitter, and especially YouTube. So what the heck could be so remarkable about film? that we would give an award for innovation to a film festival, you know, like movies. But innovative it is, and we are pleased to recognize the Cleveland International Film Festival with our Organization Innovation Award. Again, the criteria are specific and challenging. A record of innovation that includes new or reshaping of traditional products that increases the organization's value to the community. Creating breakthroughs that withstand the test of time. Expanding beyond the traditional organizational boundaries with creativity and collaboration. And generating new ideas and fresh perspectives while anticipating and responding to future challenges. In 1977, Ronald Reagan was still governor of California, and as Barbara said, Apple Computer was starting up in Steve's garage, not Steve Hoffman's. The first Concorde took off. The Pittsburgh Steelers won Super Bowl X. And the Cleveland International Film Festival started. So after 33 years, things would be pretty much the same, right? Not so. In the past 5 years, the Cleveland International Film Festival has doubled its attendance, and this past year, almost 67,000 people watched over 300 offerings from 64 countries. The festival's success is rooted in its efforts to consciously and with conscience seek out films that address the challenges of our times, with specific genres designed to explore urgent, relevant, and complex social issues. As they say, issues that cannot or should not be ignored. Domestic violence, children with AIDS, race and diversity, mental health stigma, censorship. But it is all not doom and gloom, and the festival would not be successful if it were. There are movies on local heroes, made by, in, or about Clevelanders, midnight movies, Pacific Pearls, and sports. The festival uses the tools of the times, Facebook, Twitter, and Flickr, to promote the showings, not only to the obvious audiences, but to the community at large. The organizational culture at the Cleveland International Film Festival is described as, well, unique. There is an openness both in space and attitude that contributes to a sense of collaboration and fun. But make no mistake, it is a big undertaking. In addition to the attendance and the number of films, there are over 350 volunteers, 108 sponsors, 61 community partners, and 65 media partners, all somehow joining together to produce what has become one of the most highly regarded film festivals in the United States. Recognized by Time Magazine when they wrote, "Couldn't make Cannes? Try Cleveland." With its high spirits, with passionate enthusiasm, tempered by practical and clever marketing, with an intuitive sense of what makes good film, and perhaps shaping where the market is heading, the Cleveland International Film Festival has reinvented itself and made a mark in our community and for our community. As Mike Reisler, creative director of CineReach, said, "Whatever you're putting in the water, please, please keep doing it." Would you join me in presenting the 2009 Mandel Center Organization Innovation Award to Jules Belkin, President of the Board of Directors and the Cleveland International Film Festival.
There's really not too much more that I can say after Jim's introduction. You're going to hear some of the same numbers again, but it's going to resonate a little bit deeper when I say it, because I have a much lower voice than Jim. Good afternoon. You know, I've watched the Academy Awards for many years. Could never quite understand the winners' compulsion to spend their allotted time choking up, carrying on, tears, and endless thank yous. Well, This is the Film Festival's Academy Awards opportunity. And as their representative, my breathing is easy, I'm calm, I'm not prone to tears, but the need to address the thank yous is overwhelming. So, here we go. Today, the first and most important thank you goes to the Mandel Center for the nonprofit organizations. We at the Film Festival recognize the outstanding educational and service programs which you provide. Without you, we wouldn't be here. And with you, we and other nonprofits are able to grow and flourish. We are especially honored to be the first arts organization to receive this award. In fact, your selection committee probably deserves its own innovation award for choosing us. I must also thank individually a most incredible staff, and there's only 5, for their long hours, their devotion to our organization, and their professional manner, even as they manage to spend a lot of time at the outdoor cafes and restaurants near our office on Market Avenue. Our sincere, and this is the group right here, our sincere thanks to Marcy Goodman, our executive director, Patrick Shepard, associate director, hold the applause, we'll get them all at one time. Bill Gensler, artistic director, Debbie Samples, marketing director, and Debbie Marshall, office manager. Take a bow. Another important piece of our success is our board of directors. This is a group of 36 dedicated individuals who helped bring the film festival from the brink of disaster in 2001 to a record-breaking attendance and a healthy balance sheet in 2009. Thanks, guys. We love you, and we know there's some of you out there. Thank you. Behind our successful festival are more than 350 volunteers, over 100 seasonal part-time staff, 61 community partners, and 65 media sponsors. Your numbers are only exceeded by our gratitude. And how can we thank the foundations, the corporations, the public funders, and the individuals who continue to support us in a most generous manner? And of course, thanks to our fans, the film goers who spend many, many hours during the 10-day film festival viewing documentaries, foreign films, dramas, comedies, shorts, 10%ers from 9 a.m. to midnight. They are the real heart and soul of our festival. Last, but not the least of our thanks goes to our landlord, Tower City. Albert, thank you. Where we have been so successfully located for 19 years. And also to the guy who is Mr. Theater, our founder, the manager of Tower City Cinemas and so many other film venues in town, John Foreman. On a personal note, I would like to thank my good friend, longtime friend, 33 years, Steve Hoffman, on his award today. I know he is deserving because I've worked with him for that long. He's an unusual person. I've had the privilege of working with him in many, many capacities. And Jim, you didn't do him justice. To tie this all together, let me share with you a few other tidbits about the film festival. And these are some of the numbers you've heard before, but hear them again. Time magazine named us as one of the top 10 U.S. film festivals in the U.S. Our executive director was given the Governor's Award for Arts Administration in 2008. And because of our prestige as a film festival, 2 of our short subject winners are eligible for Academy Award nominations. We set an attendance record of 67,000 film admissions, 67,000. We have increased our admissions 27% from the previous year and almost 90% since 2003. We had 5,000 students at our high school film slam this year as we strive to involve as much of the greater community as is possible. And those, ladies and gentlemen, are just some of the highlights of our festival. So, on behalf of all of us, the Cleveland International Film Festival, we thank you, Mandel Center, for choosing us as recipients of this most prestigious award, and thank you.
We have come to the close of another celebratory experience. And thank you all so very much for being a part of this, giving us a chance to honor an innovative organization and an outstanding leader. As we wrap, just wanted to be certain, do we have several of our previous selectees in this group? If we do, would you stand just so we can recognize you for your continuous leadership? Diana, thank you again. If the awardees and the past awardees would join us just as we finished, we'd like to get a group picture. We social workers would probably call it a group hug, but it really will be a picture. And then please feel free to congratulate our awardees and to spend time mingling. Thank you all so very much, and good evening.